The day of the school open house. I arranged to leave work early and hurried straight to the school. Outside, the heat was unbearable, and sweat was pouring down like a waterfall, but thanks to leaving work early, I managed to arrive just in time before it started. When I got to the school and saw how dressed up the other parents were, I finally realized how shabby I looked. I had been so focused on keeping my promise that I had completely forgotten about my appearance. The class was English. The assignment was to read aloud the essays that had been given as summer vacation homework. I wondered what Susan had written about. The other children mostly talked about what they did over the summer, sharing their stories in their still awkward English, telling about where they went and what they played. With each story, my anxiety grew. This year, Susan only had sad memories. And to make things worse, even the promise we made for the summer was broken. I should never have accepted that job. And then, it was Susan's turn to stand up.
My grandma, Susan Brown.
My heart skipped a beat. Not only because she called me, but as soon as she began reading, dozens of eyes turned towards me. For those who didn't know the circumstances, they must have wondered why her grandmother was there, and so I became the subject of their curious stares. I didn't mind that, but I couldn't stand the thought of something happening to Susan.
My grandma is a liar.
Cold, judgmental eyes rained down on me, still in my shabby work clothes. And not just that. I could even hear faint giggles coming from somewhere unseen. At that moment, my heart shattered into pieces.
Grandma, can you read this?
Let's see. Hold on. My glasses. Where are my glasses? Kathy, can't even read without my reading glasses anymore. Fortunately, since it's a children's book, it's not difficult, and the text is fairly large, so it's relatively easy to read. When I finished reading, I realized my granddaughter Susan had fallen asleep. She will likely ask me to read it again next time she comes over. Looking at her sleeping face, I finally understood the phrase "so precious you wouldn't mind putting them in your eye." No matter how many times I look, she's always adorable.
Susan, it's time to go home. Oh, she's asleep. Mom, did you put her to bed?
She asked me to read a book, so I did. She fell asleep while I was reading. My son and his wife came to pick her up after finishing their errands, but Susan was already fast asleep. It's getting late, so why don't you two go out for dinner? I don't mind keeping her overnight.
Well, I am hungry. Are you sure?
Absolutely. Besides, she'd probably be thrilled to have a sleepover.
If you're offering, then thanks. I'll bring over some clothes and stuff later.
My son said this, squinting affectionately at his sleeping daughter before leaving the living room.
Thank you, Kathy. Please take care of Susan.
Of course, go have fun. I'll make sure she has dinner. With that, I stepped outside and waved them off as they drove away. Little did I know, those were the last words we would ever exchange. It has been 5 years since I lost my husband to illness. Once again, I've been left behind. For them, perhaps the only solace was that they passed without suffering. I never imagined that I would lose not only my husband but also my son and his wife so soon, and the pain was unbearably cruel. But what about Susan? She lost her parents at such a young age. The situation Susan has been left in is far more tragic than my own, as I was only meant to live out my remaining years. I must do whatever it takes to protect Susan. Therefore, from this moment on, my remaining years will return to being a life. I made that vow as I stood before the bodies of my son and his wife. Reality, and society at large, can be so heartless, especially when it comes to financial matters, which are far tighter than necessary. I hadn't been completely unaware of it before, but now, faced with the task of raising a child again at my age, the weight of that realization pressed down on me. If things continue as they are, I fear it won't be long before I hit the bottom. I've always worked, and I have some savings, but that alone won't cover all the expenses for the two of us, including school fees. Right now, I need to stay close to Susan and support her. But once things settle down, I will need to take on more work. It will make Susan feel lonely, but if everything falls apart, it will all be for nothing. I feel heartbroken when I think of how this will affect her, but there's no other choice. A few days after the memorial service, which we held with many friends in attendance. Of course, Susan's emotional wounds hadn't healed, but in order to protect her future, I knew I had to act sooner rather than later. For that, I needed Susan's cooperation as well. Susan, Grandma is thinking of taking on more work. That means you'll have to spend a bit more time at home alone. Will you be okay?
Yeah, I'll be fine.
I see. Thank you. I'll try to find a job that I can do while you're at school.
Grandma, you've lost weight.
Oh really? Well, isn't that a nice thing to say? I knew full well that wasn't what Susan really wanted to say. But if I didn't make light of it, there would still be a sense of awkwardness in the conversation. It wasn't a good moment for either of us. In truth, I had lost a lot of weight since the memorial service ended. I hadn't intentionally skipped any meals, so it became clear to me that I hadn't been immune to the emotional toll. When Susan pointed it out, I realized that in her own way, she was worried about me. Knowing that, I couldn't afford to show any weakness. After that, I applied for a building cleaning job within walking distance of my home and was hired. While continuing my original job as a clerk at the local factory, I would head to the building after work, do some cleaning, and then return home around 7 p.m. Surprisingly, instead of losing weight, I started to gain, and upon looking into it, I learned that muscle weighs more than fat. It wasn't easy, but feeling the changes in my body, I thought I could do anything for Susan. As for Susan, she seemed blessed with good friends, often sharing stories about them with me. She still wasn't fully back to her old self, but her face became more animated when talking about her friends.
Today, I played with Kate. We drew pictures and colored them. Next time, I'll draw one of you, Grandma.
Really? That makes me happy. I'll be looking forward to it. If only I could capture just this one page. How wonderful it would have been, a simple and beautiful scene of a grandmother and her granddaughter sharing a quiet moment of happiness. Behind that, however, lay countless scars, with more sure to come in the future. For instance, when Susan asks, "I want this," or "I want to take lessons," it may be difficult to grant those wishes. It will hurt me to refuse, but as a child at an age prone to selfishness, she might resent me. It's not a distant future that's hard to envision. Thinking about the near future fills me with helplessness and guilt. But those feelings are no reason to not enjoy this wonderful moment. Phew, I'm done eating.
Wait, Grandma, you've barely touched your food.
I've gained weight recently. My weight's gone up. So, I'm on a diet. If a bit of my hunger and a small lie can ensure that Susan grows up physically healthy, then it's a small price to pay. And besides, part of that lie is true. Susan didn't comment on my words. The air conditioner in the office at the factory seemed to be wearing out, as the cool air was weak. It was hard to bear on this hot midsummer day, with summer vacation just around the corner. When I later went to the building for cleaning, it was the opposite. Very cool inside. Though the building wasn't particularly new, thanks to the senior staff and contractors, most of the equipment was well maintained. Still, it's physical labor. The air conditioning only helps with mild heat, and the more I moved, the more I sweated. But when I returned home, Susan would be waiting for me. That thought alone made sweating feel worthwhile. When I got home that day, Susan was waiting outside the front door. "What are you doing out here? I told you to stay inside because it's hot."
I thought you'd be coming home around now, so I came out to wait for you.
The door was properly closed. When I stepped inside, sure enough, the air conditioner was on. All right, but why did you wait outside in this heat?
Look.
Susan, with a slightly proud expression, unfolded a large piece of paper she was holding. I couldn't make out the fine print, but in the top right corner, I saw a big red 100.
I got a 100 on my test.
That's amazing. You worked really hard. I had never once told her to get good grades or even to study. There was neither time to say it, nor the inclination to do so. Whether that was a good thing or not, I didn't know, but at least Susan had pursued her studies of her own volition and proudly achieved this result. Most importantly, when I praised her, Susan smiled. It was the first time I had seen that familiar smile since that day. Though it was a bit late, I decided we should celebrate by going out for dinner. Granted, the most I could afford was a modest restaurant nearby, but it was still a treat. "How's the food, Susan? Is it good?"
Yeah, it's delicious.
Susan had chosen spaghetti with meat sauce. She was no longer at the age for a kid's meal, but she was still just a child, with a little bit of sauce smudged around her mouth. Though her smile had faded, her usual heavy, clouded expression was gone. That alone made me indescribably happy. Then, suddenly, I had an idea. "Susan, why don't we go to an amusement park next time?" It was really just a spontaneous thought, but Susan, in her own way, had made me genuinely happy today. Now, it was my turn to return the favor. Thanks to all my hard work, I had saved up just enough to afford a day out.
Really? But, are you sure?
If Grandma says it's fine, it's fine. Or, do you not want to go? I could always go by myself.
No, I want to go. But...
Then it's settled. We'll decide when to go later.
Okay.
Perhaps she still felt hesitant. Under normal circumstances, a child her age would jump at the chance to go to an amusement park. But our family has circumstances, and even as young as she is, Susan seems keenly aware of them. We don't have the luxury to be carefree, but we aren't so desperate that we can't even take a rare day off. Understanding that difference might be difficult for her, so I'll need to show it through my actions. You've got sauce on your mouth. As summer vacation progressed, 2 days before the promised day, I received a rare phone call. Hello? It was my supervisor from the building cleaning job, Beth.
Oh, hi, Kathy? Sorry to call so late. Do you have a moment?
Yes. Is something wrong? Apparently, this afternoon, there was a small accident during cleaning, and one of the senior cleaning staff had injured his head. Since the injury was to his head, they were taking extra precautions and had given that person some time off, but now someone needed to cover their shifts.
I'm filling in tomorrow, but Kathy, could you take the day after tomorrow?
I almost instinctively replied, sure, but I stopped myself just in time. The day after tomorrow. This was the day I had promised to take Susan out. What should I do? Emotionally, I felt I should refuse because I had a prior commitment. On the other hand, morally, I felt that since my boss had been flexible with my schedule, I should help out. Give me a moment to check, I said. After a few agonizing seconds, I finally broached the subject with a heavy heart. Susan, I'm sorry. I got asked to work the day after tomorrow. Would it be okay if?
It's fine. I'm not a little kid anymore. Besides, I already had pasta.
Her expressionless response squeezed my heart. I'm sorry. I promise we'll go somewhere even bigger next time.
Okay.
I told myself, this is for Susan's sake, to protect her. If I didn't, my heart would collapse under the weight of guilt. In the end, I never found the time to take her to the amusement park, and summer vacation came to a close. Susan never said anything about it, and she still talked to me like usual, but I knew there had to be some lingering resentment in her heart. One day, after several uneasy days had passed. Open house?
Yes. This Friday. I want you to come.
After what happened last time, I couldn't easily make a promise. But this time, I felt that I had to make a promise and keep it. All right. This time, I promise I'll be there. Yes, no matter what. The day of the open house. I managed to arrange to leave work early, and I hurried straight to the school. The heat outside was unbearable, with sweat pouring down like a waterfall, but thanks to leaving early, I just barely made it in time before the class began. When I arrived at the school and saw how well-dressed the other parents were, I finally realized how shabby I looked. I had been so focused on keeping my promise that I completely forgot about my appearance. But at this point, there was nothing I could do, so I just tried not to think about the stares around me. The class was English. The assignment was to read aloud essays that had apparently been given as summer vacation homework. I wondered what Susan had written about. The bell rang, and the children, who had been chatting noisily, quietly took their seats. The other kids mostly talked about their summer experiences, telling stories in their still awkward English about where they went and what they played. Each time I listened, my anxiety grew. This year, Susan only had sad memories. And to make matters worse, I had broken our summer promise. I shouldn't have taken on that extra work. Then, finally, it was Susan's turn to stand.
My grandma. Susan Brown.
My heart skipped a beat. Not only because she mentioned me, but because as soon as she began reading, dozens of eyes turned toward me. For those who didn't know our situation, they must have been wondering why her grandmother was here, and so I became the target of their curious stares. I wasn't bothered, but I couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to Susan because of this.
My grandma is a liar.
The unexpected words from her mouth pierced me like a knife. As I suspected, Susan must have been holding a grudge, even if she didn't show it. I was the only person in the room who could be described as grandma, and I felt cold, judgmental stares raining down on me in my shabby work clothes. Not only that, but I even heard faint giggles from unseen sources, and at that moment, my heart shattered. I hunched down, slipping past the other parents, and left the classroom. There were still a few parents in the hallway, but it was better than being in the classroom. Susan, louder than the other children, continued reading her essay. Because of her volume, I could still hear every word, even from the hallway.
Grandma lies a lot for my sake. She pretends she's full and gives me her food, even when she's not. She says she's dieting, even though she's already thin. She says it's not hard, even though it is.
Her words weren't critical like I had feared.
I hate it when Grandma holds off on buying nice clothes for herself. I hate it when she apologizes for not being able to buy me new clothes. I hate it when she keeps apologizing for not taking me to the amusement park. I hate it when she lies and sacrifices so much for me. But I love my grandma very much.
It turned out that all my worries were unfounded. I thought she had every right to criticize me, but instead, Susan had been genuinely concerned about me. I couldn't help but press my hand to my eyes as tears welled up.
I want my grandma to stay healthy and happy for a long time.
When Susan finished reading, the classroom erupted in applause, far louder than anything that had come before. As I returned to the classroom, the same parents who had previously given me cold stares rushed over, offering apologies and words of admiration. Among them was one parent who approached with different words than the others.
Mrs. Brown, right? My daughter's always talking about how much she appreciates Susan.
I fumbled for words, and the woman in front of me apologized and introduced herself.
I'm Emily Smith. My daughter's name is Kate. She's been very close with Susan.
Kate. That name sounded familiar. As I racked my brain, I quickly remembered. It was the name of the friend Susan had mentioned drawing pictures with. Oh, Kate. Yes, Susan always talks about her. Thank you for being so kind to her.
I've been wanting to properly meet her parents. Susan is so well-mannered. I was curious about what kind of parent raised her.
I see. I'm relieved she hasn't been causing any trouble.
So, are her parents not here today?
Oh. It seems Susan hadn't mentioned anything about our situation. I dreaded having to explain, but there was no way around it. Actually.
Oh no. I'm so sorry. I had no idea.
It's all right.
So, you're raising Susan on your own?
Yes. It's been difficult at times.
I can't imagine how hard that must be. Raising children is tough enough, even with two parents.
But I have experience, after all. And compared to when I raised my son, Susan is much more mature. For a while, we had a pleasant conversation about how Susan spent her time with her friends.
By the way, if you don't mind me asking, what do you do for work? From what Susan mentioned, it sounds like you've been pushing yourself quite a bit.
It's not that much. I've been working as a clerk at a local factory for a long time, and I recently started doing building cleaning.
Cleaning. Oh,
Emily suddenly raised her voice, startling everyone nearby, including me.
sorry.
She blushed while giving a wry smile. But still, what on earth had she noticed?
Well, is it at the Evergreen building nearby?
Yes, it is. But how did you know?
I thought so. I've been trying to figure out where I'd seen you before. My company is on the 4th and 5th floors of that building. We must have passed each other there.
Really? Small world, isn't it?
Actually, if you're interested, would you like to work for us? We're currently hiring for an office position, and with your experience, I'm sure you'd get better pay and hours.
It was an unexpected offer. If the salary and hours were truly better, I had no reason to refuse. Maybe I wouldn't have to make as many sacrifices, and more importantly, I could spend more time with Susan.
Let's talk more about it another time. I'm sure you have a lot to think about, and right now, I'd love for you to watch the kids enjoying their time together.
I followed her gaze and saw Susan, Kate, and a few other children gathered around the same table, laughing and playing.
Since becoming friends with Susan, my daughter has been enjoying school so much more. I'm really grateful to her. And of course, to you for raising her so well.
Susan's the one to thank, not me. I'm just doing what any parent would do, even if our situation is a little different.
Still, please take care of yourself. Susan would be devastated if something happened to you.
The reality of balancing two jobs was hard, and while it might work for now, over time, I knew it would take a toll on me. If something were to happen to me, I'd leave Susan alone again. After hearing more about the position, it seemed like the pay was comparable or even slightly better. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had no choice. For Susan's sake, I needed to make a move. And so, I quit the local factory where I had worked for so long, as well as my cleaning job, and became an office worker at the construction company run by Emily and her husband. The other employees, who were about a decade younger than me, welcomed me warmly, though at first, I worried whether I would be able to keep up. Everyone supported me patiently, which was reassuring, but the biggest source of comfort was Emily herself.
Kathy, Susan's over at our house again today, so don't worry. You can take her home together.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for always imposing on you.
Oh, stop. No need to be so formal. To me, you're a senior mom.
She constantly looked out for me, encouraged me to learn higher-level computer skills, and supported me in every possible way. All of this was thanks to Susan. It wasn't just my work environment that had changed. The time I could now spend with Susan had grown, and this gradually shifted the way I interacted with her. Perhaps Susan, feeling more secure as my life settled down, was slowly beginning to return to her old self. One day, just before winter break. Susan, shall we go to the amusement park?
Really? This time, I want to go.
It's okay. I won't break my promise again. Her emotional wounds may never fully heal, not even in a lifetime. But I can help fill the emptiness those wounds have left. Before, I was too focused on the practical side of things, and, as Emily said, I may have neglected the important parts of life. Now that I could manage those things better, it was time for both of us to start changing, little by little. Grandma's going to dress up nicely too, so you'll have to pick out a cute outfit, okay?
Yeah.
9 years have passed since then, and today, Susan graduated from high school. She's heading to a state university. Over the past 9 years, I worked tirelessly as an office worker at the company run by Emily and her husband, and now, we've made it to the point where Susan can enter the university of her choice. Susan herself worked hard, balancing her part-time job and intense studying, and she successfully passed the entrance exam. Last month, we both celebrated with great joy. The depth of emotion fills my heart.
Grandma, thank you.
What are you talking about? This is the result of your own hard work.
No, that's not what I mean. I might still be a burden on you for a little longer, but thank you for always taking care of me.
I just did what anyone would. I tried to say that. But the words got stuck in my throat and wouldn't come out. Instead, what poured out were endless tears.
Hey, I'm not done talking yet. Don't cry.
Even as she said this, Susan's voice was full of tears.
Back then, at the elementary school open house, when I called you a liar. I'm sorry. But it really upset me. I hated seeing you go through extra hardships because of me. So, from now on, I'll be the one supporting you. I mean it, I'm counting on you.
I'm the one who should be sorry for putting you through tough times. But seeing you grow up so wonderfully, it makes Grandma so happy. My vision blurred from the tears, and I couldn't clearly see Susan's face. I've gotten old.
Oh, Grandma! Let's go out for pasta tonight.
How did you like today's story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.